Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee to order. We have a quorum with Councilmember O'Farrell and myself. And let's start with items number 4 and 5, and let's do those together.
All right. Item number 4 is a CAO report relative to a proposed contract with Value Vet, Inc. for spay-neuter services at the West Los Angeles Animal Care Center Spay-Neuter Clinic for a term of 1 year, with 5 additional 1-year renewal options and expenditures not to exceed $500,000 per year. Item number 5 is a CAO report relative to proposed contract with SMP LA Inc. to provide animal spay-neuter surgeries at the Harbor Animal Care Center Spay-Neuter Clinic.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. Janice Cheng Yu, Office of the CAO. Here with John Chavez from the department. Before you are 2 contract recommendations from the CAO for the Department of Animal Services to contract for spay and neuter clinic services at the West LA and Harbor Animal Care Centers. Item number 4 is a proposed contract with Value Vet to operate a spay and neuter clinic at the West Los Angeles Animal Care Center for a term of 1 year with 5 1-year renewal options for a maximum of 6 years. And the value of the contract is not to exceed $500,000, and the funds would be paid from the Animal Sterilization Trust Fund. And in consideration of no-cost use of the city facility, the contractor would not be paying rent for use of the facility. The contractor will compensate the city at a rate of 5% of the clinic's adjusted gross monthly income for each animal sterilized. A similar contract is proposed for item number 5. It's with SNP LA for operation of the Harbor Animal Care Center Spay-Neuter Clinic, and this would also be a term of 1 year with 5 1-year renewal options for a contract amount not to exceed $500,000 to be paid from the Animal Sterilization Trust Fund. And in consideration of the no-cost use of the city facility, SNP LA will provide discounted services to the department equal to 10% of commission-approved fees for spay-neuter surgeries performed on animals adopted from the Harbor Care Center. And the CAO recommends both these contracts.
Very good. How many dogs and cats will be spayed and neutered over the length of these 2 contracts?
John Chavez, Department of Animal Services. Value Vet, last year they did 1,600 animals. I don't have the breakdown, council member, on dogs versus cats, but there were 1,600 that were done last year, and SNP LA at Harbor did about 800. They've ramped up, both these organizations have ramped up the number of animals that they're spaying and neutering. We get a monthly report. We review this information with the contractors. So, we're looking very closely at their numbers, and that's why we're recommending these 2 contractors, because they are in compliance with their contractual performance.
So if they ran through the full $500,000 each, how many animals do we expect to be done?
They're not going to reach $500,000 each. We're looking, and we're still in negotiations with both of them. We're looking at about 5,000 animals for Value Vet and about 2,400 per year for SNP LA.
Okay, and what's the current balance of the Sterilization Trust Fund?
There's about $4 million in the Animal Sterilization Fund.
So we're not expecting to. Are we expecting to hit the
No.
full 500,000? No.
No.
So what's our best guess as to what this winds up costing?
These contractors for Value Vet, for SNP LA, probably we're talking about $200,000 a year. For Value Vet, about that same amount. Okay,
and when are the surgeries likely to start for this contract? When's it run?
They're doing them now, Councilman. They're just waiting for a new contract with us, but both of these contractors have contracts with us. They did expire, and they're continuing to provide services. So they're doing the surgeries even now.
And presumably our experience has been good with both of these contracts.
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. O'Farrell, any questions on these?
No questions, thanks.
So then this item will be moved without objection. We will approve the CAO recommendations on both of these.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 1.
Item number 1, communication from the mayor relative to the exemption of one assistant general manager position for the Department of Recreation and Parks pursuant to Charter Section 1001B. This matter has also been referred to the Arts, Parks, Health, Aging, and River Committee.
Do we have a representative from Rec and Parks to make a short presentation on this?
Good afternoon, council members. Mike Shaw, General Manager. We respectfully request this position. It's a re-exemption of a position that it was previously held by myself that was lost when I was appointed by the mayor as the General Manager. So as part of the process, we had to ask for the re-exemption, and so I respectfully request your approval. It's desperately needed in such a large department. This position oversees approximately 800 employees.
Is this typical for departments to have this many AGMs based on the number of employees?
Well, we're one of the larger departments, so yes. I mean, it's we have currently 3 assistant general managers and an executive officer for the department. Our executive management and senior staff make up approximately 3% of the total part of the entire department from our senior level and above. So it's very, very lean and mean. But yes, it is. It should be very typical.
Very good. Mr. O'Farrell, any questions?
Just that I want to thank you again, Mike, for doing such a great job in making sure that you work with all the council offices in new projects and updating all of the projects in their respective offices. And it's a very critical position. So I hope whoever follows in your footsteps, and I think I know who it is, keeps up the great work that you did as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your support.
And I would join in that comment. I think your only difficulty is you don't get to have an AGM like yourself working for you. But hopefully,
thank you.
Hopefully you'll find somebody pretty close.
All right, thank you.
Without objection, we will approve the department's request. Item number 2.
Item number 2, Personnel Department report relative to the results of the 2014 Dependent Eligibility Verification Program for the City of Los Angeles Civilian Flexible Benefits Program.
Hi there. My name is Stephen Montagna. I'm here to represent the Personnel Department.
My name is Alex Vasquez. I'm with the Personnel Department.
Okay, so in this report, we wanted to present you with the results of that came out of the dependent eligibility verification audit. This is a program that we ran last year. That's something that was run out of the Personnel Department, but was also done in a consultation with the Joint Labor Management Benefits Committee. The goal of this program was to ensure that only eligible dependents were being covered by employees on their health plans. That program was approved in concept by the City Council in 2012, but then it was launched in April of last year. So there were approximately 15,000 individual employees that were subject to the audit, and that involved approximately 35,000 dependents. There were a wide range of outreach efforts that were used to make sure that we were able to reach all these individuals, to make sure that they understood the significance of what it is that we were doing. We also worked very closely with employee labor organizations and with all the Personnel Department's human resource liaisons, so it was a very well coordinated effort, and the result was that we actually achieved a 96% response rate, which was extremely high, and that means that basically all of those individuals responded, to the program in some fashion. So, as a result of the audit, there were approximately 2,400 individuals that were removed from member health plans. What that basically translates to is that as people are basically taken off the rolls, that can cause the health coverage tier level then to also be reduced, which ends up reducing the premium costs that have to be paid by the city. So we're estimating that for fiscal year 14-15 that the amount that would be saved, the net amount would be approximately $5 million this year. That's sort of the overview. We're happy to take any questions.
And this is money that's saved out of the general fund, or this is across the city?
That
family?
number is actually that's the net amount saved to the general fund for the human resources benefits budget.
Now, how often do you think we should perform this kind of audit in the future?
We're currently looking at that. We're looking at different options for ways that we can take some of the best practices that we learned from this process and basically carry them forward. So one possible outcome is that you basically you could rerun the same type of program that you ran the first time, but there might be other. We're also looking at other ways that we can sort of be able to improve the outreach and help people to be aware of the importance of taking ineligible dependents off of their health plans.
I mean, well, number one, obviously, if we did it every year, there'd probably be diminishing returns because you might be an employee for 20 years and your 10-year-old became a 30-year-old, but that's not going to happen every year. Your spouse divorces you or vice versa, and that happens. That's not going to happen with great frequency either. So probably doing it annually would be too much unless there's virtually no cost. But we probably have to figure out where the appropriate line is, where you start picking up people that make this inadvertent mistake. I think we also need to do a better job of letting people know in the first place with some sort of outreach to all our employees every X number of months or years that these are the rules and your dependent is off at age blank unless they're going to school, whatever the rules are there, and that your ex-wife is no longer on your policy, all the different things that people should know. I think a lot of them are still on there because employees really aren't focused on it, aren't aware of it, aren't thinking about it. So it may also be that doing enough outreach elongates the amount of time between doing these. But clearly it's of a lot of value. I mean, taking an action like this, if it saves the city $5 million, it's obviously not just going to be in 1 year. It'll have a little bit of staying power too. So obviously a really good move by the city and a good effort towards efficiency, and I commend you for doing this. What about doing this with the employees that haven't been included? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. So just to kind of touch upon one of the other issues that you raised, every year we do, with our open enrollment materials, do ask employees to review the list of dependents on their plan and ask them to give us any updates. But as Stephen has indicated, obviously some employees are not heeding that message, so we'll certainly take back and look at how we can improve our communication efforts to get employees to update their records on a timely basis. With respect to the other question,
Let me stop you on that one. I'm just using myself as an example. I'm happy with Kaiser. I'm going to stick with Kaiser. I have nothing that jumps at me to make me pay attention to open enrollment. So I see an open enrollment email, click, it's gone. So I never read that. On the other hand, at some point, my daughter becomes too old to be on my health plan. I'm never going to register that in my head through an open enrollment message.
yeah,
So I think it probably should be its own separate messaging just on that subject. And if we do it, through email, et cetera, there's virtually no cost to sending that message.
on certain dependents, for example, in adult children that age out, we are able to catch those by their birth date that we have identified in our system. But the more difficult ones are, for example, individuals that get divorced or domestic partnerships that cease or separate. Those are the more difficult ones. But we certainly will take a look at that and see if we can improve our communication efforts.
And isn't there a different age if the adult children are in college or they're not?
No.
There's not. Okay.
With respect to the second question, we Personnel Department administers the Civilian Flex Program, and we don't have any direct administrative responsibility for the other plans. But I know that's something that we certainly recommend. I know to the other plans to take a look at because of the potential savings.
And I know there's a question on the part of the folks that would have to do the work for our other set of employees. What's the cost? What's the amount of time having to be spent on it? How much of that should be a concern? How difficult was that for us in doing this piece of it?
Well, on the cost issue, I mean, the cost of the program itself was about $340,000. So certainly that amount relative to the amount that was saved is relatively small. But this did take a considerable effort, and I think it's worthwhile to point out again that it wasn't just the efforts of the personnel department. There was a lot of outreach that was done by the individual departments and also by the employee labor organizations. So it really was the reason it was very successful was that there were lots of different resources being applied to get the word out and to make it happen.
And this was also simpler because there was an amnesty element, which I presume would be attached to any other efforts with other employee groups as well.
Yes, certainly the waiver provision that we had as part of this program was helpful. I think because employees were probably more encouraged to self-report and remove any dependents, so that was helpful.
Mr. O'Farrell, any other questions on this?
Mr. President, so based on this one verification program, you projected out 3 years of savings, right, into 16-17, totaling over $16 million. That's very impressive, so thank you for your work. Does that mean that to the chair's previous inquiry, maybe every 3 years do this sort of thing, or do you also have numbers that project beyond fiscal year 16-17?
I think in terms of repeating the verification process, as Stephen said, I think we're still kind of internally reviewing that. What is the correct number of frequency? We should look at that. But certainly, I think in my mind, maybe 3 years or 4 or 5 years would be, I think, would be recommended. But we're still kind of looking at that. And again, looking at just revamping or increasing our communication efforts to employees and also making it easier for them if they have a divorce, prompting them to change various things related to their benefits, their retirement. And so one of the things that's an issue is that we don't necessarily have a centralized system for all HR. So that kind of makes it difficult because when an employee has a life event, they have to go to different places to update their records. So long-term, ideally, it would be nice to have one place where an employee could take care of all those things.
And there's certainly an incentive for them too, because it's cost savings for them. And has the department ever done a verification system like this, or is this the first?
Well, a few years ago, we actually did do a small verification process on grandchildren because we noticed that there was an increase in the number of grandchildren, and we thought that, and there was also, we think, some confusion about how you could add a grandchild to your plan. So it was a very small group, and we actually did our own internal verification process in that instance, and it was quite successful. And I think one other time we might have done a process where we required individuals to submit verification of their dependents, but that was more than 15 years ago. But when an employee does add a new dependent, we do require them to submit documentation to support their eligibility. So that is done on a day-to-day basis.
And lastly, I just think another round of significant savings like this every 3 or 4 years or 5, however you decide, should be built into the budget request every 3, 4, or 5 years, so that it can result in $15-16 million of savings every decade. That's pretty incredible.
Well, we're hoping that, in the best of all possible worlds, we won't have people putting ineligible dependents on there. And I think so, one of the lessons learned that we want to take out of this to go forward, just as you were saying, is really to improve the communication ongoing, so that we don't have situations where people are not not removing dependents in a timely way, so that we're not having to spend money, for if individuals who were not eligible in the first place.
I mean, it may turn out even that when you repeat this 3 or 4 years from now, you just do a representative sample and see if you're actually saving enough money to do the whole workforce. Because if you really put in systems to do the outreach, this may not be the kind of widespread problem that we're taking care of right now, and saving a lot of money and efficiency. But if we can avoid the problem, so much the better on an ongoing basis. Well, very good. This is a bit of good news that we've created this additional efficiency in this regard. And I believe we have a member of the public who would like to speak. Cheryl Parisi from AFSCME Council 36.
Great, thanks very much. I'm also really speaking in my capacity as the labor chair of the city's Joint Labor Management Benefits Committee. And first of all, let me just say, I really want to commend the staff who worked very hard and quite honestly, I think provided, did a lot of outreach, a lot of extraordinary outreach, multiple notices, and also dealt with a lot of sensitivity to employees who may have had difficulty producing necessary documents. I mean, you can imagine if folks had marriages or births in foreign countries, sometimes the difficulty of obtaining those records. So there was just a lot of sensitivity, I think, provided to all of the employees in this process. And, all of the labor organizations that are have again employees in the or members in the served through the Joint Labor Management Benefits System, through the Flex Benefits System, participated fully. We did a lot of outreach to our members to encourage full participation, and I think you can see the result. What happened here is, I think, extraordinary. It's a structural change in that we obviously are not going to see in future years the adding back of these employees. And then, of course, in future years, as the city does hiring, it would make sense to sort of renew these efforts. But we're very proud. We think it was an important step to take. We think it, certainly enhanced awareness among city employees of who actually is eligible to be covered under the benefit structure. But again, certainly in future years, we'll have to probably renew the effort. But it was successful, and I think in large part just because of the dedication of the staff, the Personnel Department Benefits section. I think they just did an extraordinary job. But it was a true partnership.
Thank you, and I certainly agree. It couldn't have been done without an exceptional effort by our personnel folks and our labor partners, so we appreciate all that good work.
Thank you.
If I could just take a quick second. I mean, I want to specifically call out and thank Anna Chavez and Maria Ku, who were basically the day-to-day people that worked on this and really worked with all the employees on this. And so it was successful in large part because of their efforts. So,
And we appreciate that as well, of course.
Very good job. Very good job.
Well, thank you. Without objection, we will receive and file this very positive report. And item number 3.
Item number 3, Personnel Department Report relative to the Consolidated Reasonable Accommodation Report for the first quarter of fiscal year 2014-15.
Afternoon, Raylan Napper, Personnel Department. So this report covers the first quarter of the current fiscal year, and for industrial injury and illness, it compares this quarter to the same quarter last fiscal year. Workers' Compensation Division reports employees with industrial injury or illness, and they track light-duty hours worked. IOD saved, which is the light-duty hours times an employee's salary, and the IOD spent, which is money when employees are off of work, their salary paid. And if the first two, light-duty hours and IOD saved, increase, we generally like to see IOD spent. Attachment 1 shows the department and city totals. Page 1 is the past fiscal year, page 2 is the current fiscal year. And you can see that light-duty hours decreased by approximately 12%. IOD saved decreased by just over 10%. And IOD spent increased by 11.5%. So generally not the way we like the numbers to trend.
So why do we think that happened?
I think that might require a detailed answer for which members of the Workers' Compensation Division are here to answer.
I'd take that detailed answer if they're available.
I think they are.
Let's hear it.
Good afternoon, Councilman.
Good afternoon.
Tyrone Spears, Personnel Department. And the question again, sir?
The question is why was there a different number from year to year? Why has it gone in this direction?
Well, there's several reasons or explanations why, IOD costs has increased over the same period last year. And if you look from the exhibit in the numbers, you'll see that the majority of the increase was due to the sworn personnel, and police and fire had the majority of the increase, and then civilian was about 2.7% over the same period last year, which is kind of incremental in its increase. But basically, IOD is paid when an employee is unable to work and is on temporary disability. And IOD is determined, or temporary disability is determined by a medical doctor, which is a medical decision. And the Work Comp Division, have resources, but really not much control initially over a doctor's decision to take an employee off work. However, we do use our resources and our means to get alternate medical opinions to dispute the doctor, but that takes anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So therefore, an employee could be off 3 to 6 months while we're getting another doctor's report to refute their doctor's report that this employee can actually work.
Now, what about the ones where they're not completely disabled and they could come back to work on light duty. There's some departments that seem to do that more often than other departments. Would we not greatly benefit if we were trying to bring people back in all departments as aggressively as possible to at least be doing something rather than to be paid sitting home doing nothing?
Donna Alvarado, Workers' Comp Personnel Department. We are addressing that. Approximately 6 weeks ago, we started a nurse case management pilot. And in this pilot, we took 100 claims where they were off on IOD in more than 30 days. And the results after 6 weeks, 36 of those cases proved to be positive. The majority is police and fire sworn that returned to work either modified or full duty. What anomaly that happened, firefighters are actually returning to work part-time, which is a really good thing because we're getting them back in some form where that wasn't happening before. So out of the study, the pilot, we had 93 viable cases out there, and with the police, we returned 3 to full duty, 5 modified duty, fire 7 modified, 4 full duty, civilian 13 modified, 4 full duty. We did have 10 cases where the departments would not or could not accommodate them. So this pilot is addressing our eagerness and participation with the departments to get these people back to work that can do some type of work for the department. And to top on what Tyrone was speaking about, the biggest increase is with the sworn program, the police and fire. But when you look at LAPD hours worked during that quarter, their hours worked are up 10% during the first quarter 14-15, which may it increase the risk. It may have contributed to that 10% increase. 2 other factors that are also we need to consider is the drop program and the recession. A lot of what I'm seeing with the police and fire sworn is we're having, typically they would retire 50 to 55, but they're continuing to work because of what happened to them in their retirement funds during the recession. And the older they are, the slower they heal.
So what I'm looking at primarily is, I guess, if you took your 100 people, the 10 that weren't accepted by the department, because I think that's a costly decision by whatever department isn't willing to take people back on a light duty basis. So what can we do to try and increase that number and eliminate the people that could work but aren't taken back in any form?
We just finished our analysis of the first 6 weeks, and we are going to be meeting with each one of those departments that would not accommodate.
So I don't know if, well, that's good. That sounds like a good step. If you find that you're not getting cooperation, I think you should let us know, because we would like to, I think, push harder on that. I think that's certainly an inefficiency for the city to be paying people that could come back to work in some form. Certainly, LAPD is an example. A lot of more clerical folks have been cut on the civilian end. I think we probably should staff up more in that regard, but we also, if there are sworn personnel that can't be out in the field but could perform some of those functions, they should come back and perform some of those functions. Or if there are fire folks that can't handle being out in the field for a while, they could certainly do duty on a 911 line. So I think we'd certainly like to encourage that, but it sounds like you're already moving at least in the right direction. Mr. O'Farrell, comments?
Thank you.
Well, if there are no other comments or questions, we will receive and file that report as well, unless I think we belatedly have a card coming in, so we will.
Thank you.
Once again.
Cheryl Parisi from AFSCME District Council 36 and Chair of the Coalition of City Unions. On the whole question of workers' comp, let me just first of all I don't know that the issue needs to be reminded, but I'll raise it anyway. I mean, the city workforce is down by 7,000. And essentially what that means, and not the sworn workforce, but the civilian workforce, and I'll speak to that today only. Essentially what that means is that city workers are working harder, faster, many of them doing 2 and 3 jobs, speeding up, oftentimes not doing the work with the precautions necessary, a lot of, overtime assignments, et cetera. So that just the overall pressure of having such a small workforce without reduced demand. But also there's been an impact in terms of the front end, a decline in the effectiveness or the staffing of the city's safety program. The first effective workers' compensation program is really to make certain that people on the front end aren't injured at all. And so I think it's important that we think about that as the first solution in terms of trying to drive down the use of workers' compensation and IOD time as effective safety programs, to really look at where accidents are happening, be able to develop targeted programs, and make certain that ongoing training and effective ergonomic programs, et cetera, are in effect to prevent injuries in the first place. I think the gentleman also talked about the fact that it can take 3 to 6 months to dispute a diagnosis. The coalition is advocating that all civilian workers be enrolled in alternative dispute resolution workers' compensation programs, so that we try to drive down those disputes between doctors and try to, basically, when a worker is injured, immediately try to get them the treatment that they need so that they can heal and come back to work. I think that's one of the most important things that we can do. And then the last thing, of course, and I think you identified it strongly, is effective return to work and light duty programs, and to really figure out why some departments are vigorously and willfully accepting injured workers back on light duty, and other departments are resisting, so that we can, effectively get everybody back to work in some capacity within their restrictions, so that they're, kind of back in the flow of work and not languishing at home, either, again, for denied treatment or denied light duty opportunities. And so I think if we can begin to deal with all of those issues, we can, really see a decline in the use of IOD time. But again, most important is to begin to restore the city workforce at a level that's comparable with the service expectations.
Well, I think that's certainly true. The first step is to not have such an overworked workforce that you're not cutting corners and racing around trying to do sanitation jobs more quickly or whatever. A lot of those are just asking for injuries. But as far as the safety program, you've watched this for a while. What's your sense of how good our safety program is now compared to where it's been in the past? Are we going light on it because it's one of 100 things that are undercut financially? Could we do more? Have we done more in the past?
We have. I mean, the irony is, I think there's more attention. I'll just speak, for example, in our clerical unit. I think there's more attention to providing the proper equipment, but there isn't the attention, which you always need, is the training for the ongoing training for the worker on how to use the equipment. Because even if we have the most sophisticated, adjustable kinds of desks and chairs and all the rest of it, unless there's ongoing training so that employees individually understand, how to conduct their work, how to adjust their workstation. And obviously with the cuts everywhere, there's been certainly cuts in that. There needs to be ongoing training for supervisors in basic safety so that they can conduct the traditional tailgate safety meeting in the blue-collar area, or whatever we want to call it in the white-collar area. And so I think attention needs to be given to the quality and the restoration of the city's safety program.
Very good. Thank you. And we will also receive and file this report. And having no public comment speakers and no items on the agenda, we are adjourned.